Perfect. Now it's recording so that you can watch it again later if you want. Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. I know we are from different places of the world. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you for joining us today. I see a lot of familiar names here, so people who attended many workshops of Drawify. Thank you for joining us again. It's wonderful to see this loyal community of fans. And I also see many names. So people that came here for the first time. So I want to welcome you all. Thank you for joining too. And for these people, I'm gonna shortly introduce Drawify. Well, first of all, my name is Marta. I'm part of the marketing team in Drawify. It's very nice to meet you all. And on Drawify, we all have a mission. We want to free the world from bad presentations and boring bullet points. And we want to inspire and empower people to use visuals and even more drawings, of course. Because we believe that simple drawings are very powerful in communication. And although we strongly believe that everyone can draw, we see that a lot of people just don't have the confidence to draw themselves, or maybe they just don't have the time. And that's why we created Drawify in 2020. It's basically an easy tool where you can create your own illustrations without having to draw yourself. So you have all done, you just have to create yourself with the basics. And a team of talented world-class visual storytellers are behind. So they share their artworks so you can reuse it, you can mix them, and you can compose and customize by dragging and dropping. It's very simple. And so we also organize free monthly workshops like the one today, where you can learn different aspects about visual storytelling. Every month we invite inspiring speakers, people who's so generous like Ben, to share knowledge, tips, and tricks to help you become a better visual storyteller, because that's our main goal. And today we have the absolute honor to have Ben Crothers with us. He's one of our most active Drawifiers, one of the artists behind the scenes. That's how we call them. And well, besides being a top-notch Drawifier, he is also a professional graphic recorder, a facilitator, and a trainer, and also author of one of our favorite books, which is Presto sketching. And well, now I'm gonna let Ben introduce himself a little bit more. And well, I hope you enjoy the workshop. I'll be here. We're gonna be on the chat too. So if you have any questions and you wanna participate, this is an interactive workshop, so feel free to write on the chat. I'm just gonna turn my camera off, so all eyes are on you, Ben, but I'll be here, okay? Thank you, Ben.
Thank you very much, Marta. Hello, everyone. I love Drawify. I love the game. I get a lot out of drawing for Drawify, and it's always really satisfying seeing the pictures that people come up with, the drawings that I've put onto the Drawify platform. And not only my drawings, but the drawings from all the other Drawifiers as well. And it's just a really lovely way to unleash people's creativity, you know, just to help get them going. I'm coming to you from Sydney, Australia. Hello from Sydney, Australia, and wherever you're joining us from, thank you for giving your time and attention. Please make sure you've got something to draw with, draw with and draw on, because there's going to be lots of drawing, and I'm going to go old school here. I'm going to be using pen and paper. Why might that be? Well, because I want to show you how I draw, and you can see my hand as I draw. So give me a thumbs up or something in the chat just to let me know that you've got something to draw with and on, or where you're joining from, or if you can't see my screen or my my drawing here. That'd be good to know as well. Here we are. What we're going to look at is how to create better visual frameworks for alignment and decisions. with thanks to Drawify. I'm not going to bang on too much about me, here's me. As Marta really nicely said, I'm one of the Drawifiers, and I've been drawing at work for more than 25 years. And I get a lot out of it personally, but it's such an effective way of thinking and communicating and solving problems at work. Now, I'm guessing you kind of know that already, which is why you're here. As Marta said, I've got my main book out is called Presto Sketching. I'm very proud of that. A lot of what I teach is in that book. And I still wear glasses. I'm going to put bigger glasses and put a big mustache on me. There we go. I've never defaced my own photo. There we go. I've also done another book called Draw in 4, which is helpful for you if you just want to increase your own visual vocabulary and increase the number of different things that you can draw on the spot. So that's Draw in 4. And I facilitate a lot of meetings. And so I came up with a book called 50 Remote Friendly Icebreakers. And I've got some links at the end to check that out. Or you can just go to Bright Pilots, which is brightpilots.com, or bencrothers.com, and there's links to books and all sorts of stuff that I write and all that. But enough about me. You're not here to listen about me. You're here to listen and draw about how to create better visual frameworks. Now, I want to share a problem that I've had, and I wonder if you've had this problem too. And that is, I kind of go on this two ends of a spectrum, where on one end, I'm kind of, you know, a bit bored, where I've been using the same visual frameworks all the time, and they kind of lose their impact after a while. I find people in my meetings aren't as engaged as they used to be because we always use the same ones, like whether it's kind of a retrospective board or like a visual with a mountain and a flag, and we need to sort of work out, well, how do we get to that metaphorical flag? All of these frameworks that we use and other things like business model canvases, they're great. But if we don't change it up, well, then it gets boring. People get disengaged. But then on the other hand, there are so many visual frameworks, aren't there? There are so many. And if you're anything like me, you might start collecting a lot of them. And before you know it, you've got a lot, but you're not quite sure which one to reach for at what time. So that's the sort of spectrum that I thought, look, I was tired of going back and forth and back and forth. I thought there has to be a better way. There has to be something in the middle where I know how to pick which visual framework to use. So that's what I want to share with you. Now, as I mentioned, yes, there are a lot of patterns around. I don't know why I printed out a page with links. It's not like I can press the links and they conjure up some sites. But the point is, there are certainly lots of fantastic websites with lots of frameworks and lots of great books. But knowing them all often isn't valuable enough, is it? So the first thing I want to show you is, I guess, a way to approach how people take in the information when we use visual frameworks, whether it's in meetings, rich pictures, diagrams in presentations, things like that. Because often what we're after is alignment and making decisions. In other words, whether it's a whole group of people or a single person, they want to know, where do I fit in? And making decisions, like, do we need to do it now or later? Do I make the decision or do we make the decision? There's lots of complexity in how we align and make decisions. And if you think about it, we don't always make decisions in the head, do we? In fact, truth be told, we often make decisions more in the heart first. So say, here's us, and here's our brain. That's a brain, believe it or not. And we've got a heart. And so if we think about it, there's actually different levels that we can make decisions. There's a rational level, isn't it? Like just the facts. We make decisions at a rational level, but we can make decisions at an emotional level as well. As well as that, sometimes we make decisions at a practical level. And usually it's, of course, a mix of all three, isn't it? Rational, emotional, and practical. So whenever we use drawings in our meetings or diagrams, we have to appeal to different levels, rational and or emotional and or practical. I hope that makes sense. And by the way, do please feel free to use the Q&A feature in Zoom and ask any questions, because Marta is standing by ready to field your questions. And I certainly want to leave some time for questions at the end. So there's several levels that often we need to connect with people with our pictures. Okay, so we've got a whole lot of frameworks, and we've got these three levels. What I want to show you is a way that we can actually bring them together. And this is a 3x3 matrix that I find really helpful, and I hope you find helpful too. So here's the three levels. And I've used the word frames. So often when we use visuals or we draw, we're presenting information, or we're trying to elicit information from people at these three levels, and we need to frame it in different ways. So we can frame it in a logical way. So as I mentioned, just the facts. And so here's where schematic diagrams are good, because they appeal to the brain. It's brain. And when it comes to emotional, often we need stuff to do with story and metaphor. So we appeal to the heart. And sometimes we need to appeal to the hands, the practical, in which case it's more about showing realistic depictions of what people need to do. So in a way, you can think about it as, I'm grabbing my orange marker here. Often the schematic is what? What do I need to pay attention to? Metaphor is why. Why should I care? Why me? Why now? And the realistic is how. So even right now, you might want to think of something that you're putting together. Maybe it's a business presentation or a meeting you've got coming up. And you might want to think about, what levels am I trying to appeal to people? And it's probably more than one. Okay, now for each of those, there's also three columns I want to show you, because a lot of what we talk about and think about at work has got to do with these three categories. Now, these aren't perfect, but these work for me, and I hope they work for you too. First one, process, progress, and change. Things that happen over time. Transformation. If you're in change management or any form of management, you probably deal with information to do with that. Problems and solutions. How do we make sense of the mess? How do we take that one big thing and break it down into pieces, manageable pieces? And thirdly, strategy and systems. And this is where often we look at technical systems, human systems, natural systems, things that have lots of different pieces. And we need to know that system and how it's all connected. What I want to do is draw just a few examples of frameworks into these 9 squares. So I hope you can draw along with me. So when it comes to progress, process, and change, and we want to appeal to the logical level, it's just facts. And so here's where our good old boxes and arrows come in handy. And boxes and arrows are probably the one of the most fundamental visual frameworks. But there's also things like steps. We need to show steps. Also charts, line charts, bar charts, things like that. Things that show facts, sequence of actions. And maybe something like a ladder. Or I'm going to use a fancy word, an Ishikawa diagram or a fishbone diagram. Things that show, look, what were the factors that led to where we are now? Things like that. And if we're looking for schematic depictions of problems and solutions, here's where you've probably seen things like we might plot something on impact versus effort, where we think something might be a lot of effort, but a lot of impact. Or maybe it's something that's a lot of effort and no impact, so we wouldn't do that. And sometimes we think, well, there might be a problem we're looking at here, and we do some root cause analysis. And there might be some mind mapping we do, like one particular element has several other causes and so on. And then when it comes to strategy and systems, looking at how pieces fit together, that's where things like pyramid stacks come in handy, or just square stacks. For example, this is a technical system, this might be platform, and this might be services, and this might be product, and this might be marketing on top, something like that. Something that shows a schematic view of a system, like that. Sometimes we see rings. Is there a concentric sequence of pieces? Now let's have a look at emotional. So when we want to convey things to do with process, progress, change, with metaphor, here's now where we can use like our good old flag on a hill, and maybe some milestone flags as we go up the hill to our goal. We can use things like that. We can overlay other metaphors, like we can say, well, it's going to be very stormy weather as we go up our metaphorical hill. Or maybe there's things to do with transformation, like a caterpillar that turns into a butterfly. Things that represent transformation. Or if you think about the change in seasons, right now in Australia, it's very much winter, like winter is really hit. And I have lots of friends who are overseas where it's summer, and they're talking about what a great summer they're having. And so there might be something using seasons that will resonate with your audience. And because it resonates with us on an emotional level. And likewise, when it comes to showing problems and solutions as metaphors, that's where we can think, well, I'm going to use this A-frame here and use it as an iceberg to say, well, there's certainly visible instances of a problem, like certain behaviors or certain results. And then there's things happening under the surface. What are the beliefs that we have that might be causing a problem? Things like that. And then, of course, we can look at, well, you know, when people use that cliche, how do we move the dial? How do we move the needle? Sometimes it's actually helpful to actually draw that cliche. Here's the dial. We might say, well, we've got a dial and it's here right now, and we want it to be over here, but we can't seem to move the dial. And so you can actually use people's cliches and draw those cliches, because they often have quite rich metaphor in them, and metaphors resonate with people. And lastly, when it comes to showing strategy and systems in an emotional way, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because often people think strategy is such a rational thing, but you can actually use these sort of structures in a metaphorical way. Like I might use a rocket like this. We go, well, stage one of our strategy, that's the base. That needs to fire off and do what it needs to do before stage two. And then we've got the cockpit, which is our stage three. And of course, it's always helpful to show some happy, smiley people inside that rocket. So it's using that metaphor of a rocket as a metaphor wrapped over a schematic structure like that. And if I have this stack, I could instead use that stack and show it as a cake, like a layer cake. And then you can add other elements, like what might the candles represent? Are they the number of years that the system has been running? Is one of the candles really low? What does the icing represent? Or is there like a cherry on top of the cake? What would that cherry represent? So you can have some fun with that. And often it's nice when the people in your group or your meeting or your team, when they come up with the metaphor and they add more metaphorical richness to it. That's happened a lot for me in my meetings. And then lastly, I'll go quickly with this realistic part, because I really want to focus on these two, the logical and the emotional. But when we want to show the practical, that tends to be the point where we might have worked out a strategy. We might have worked out the why and the what, and we want to show the how. And so when it comes to showing process and progress, and here's where we're used to seeing things like roadmaps, Gantt charts, Kanban boards, things that show how work is going to get done. I think we're really good at those. I think that's fine. And when it comes to practical ways of showing problems and solutions, I think we're really good here too. I'm a designer from way back, especially digital design, and I've been very used to drawing wireframes. So when you show wireframes or drawings of what a new interface might be that solves a particular user problem, that's showing how, isn't it? And I think we're pretty good at those. And the very last one, how do you show a practical visualization of strategy and systems? Well, here's where I think maps are really good, where we can say, well, you're here, so here's you, or maybe like here's the business, like there's a building. I'm sorry, that's so small. I should have mentioned before, I hope you've got me on large view as well. And then as a map, we want to show, well, we need to go to here, and we don't want to go there, and we don't want to go there, because this is where the opportunity is. So showing things as a map, I think, can be really helpful. Okay, so now the reason why I'm showing you this is because when you think about the sort of things that you want to show in your meetings and your presentations and your reports and things like that, once you fill this out, you can keep it on your wall. In fact, I've got a copy on my wall. That's why I'm looking at it every now and again right now. And you can use this as a reference. And that's what I'm going to do in this next part of what we're going to get into, because there's two things that I wanted to show to you in this webinar. The first thing is this 3x3 handy reference. The second thing is now getting to that first, or to the title of this webinar, and is how do you create better visual frameworks for alignment and decisions? How do you create frameworks that you may not have used before. You want to have some variety, but that taps into the rational and the emotional, let alone the practical. So that's what we're going to turn to now. Again, please feel free.
This looks amazing and it's beautiful. So please, everybody, feel free to copy Ben's style. And if any of you is already doing it, feel free. I mean, this is the format is a webinar, so you cannot share your screen. But feel free if you want to share us a screenshot or something as of your creation of this 3x3, because I think it's very, very useful. And maybe you are already creating something. Feel free to share with us.
Thanks, Marta. That's right. And you might be wondering, well, how do I know which ones to draw in each of these? And that's where I showed you that funny printout of some website links before. If you ever see any kind of frameworks, if you see anything on social media that you think, wow, that's a really good framework, draw it, copy it, keep a notebook and copy what you see into that notebook. And that's exactly what I do. Like here's, I hope you can all see me on live on the speaker view.
Yeah,
so here's notebook. Oh, you can?
Yeah.
So here's what I've done. There's a target, and then I've drawn some examples of how I might use a target. And there's a map. So there's a map. So whenever I see a particular pattern or a framework, I draw it. There's a tree and a ladder, because I know that they're going to come in handy. So if you do that, then you can go back to this 3x3 and think, well, what could I draw in each of those? So it's a really nice way to add some structure to your collection. Okay, now I'm going to move on, as I said, to how to create a visual framework. I've got a 5-step process for you. Step 1. First thing we have to do when we think about what visual framework we want to make or draw or create is to get clear on the goal. The goal of our communication, the goal of our meeting, whatever it is. What are we trying to achieve? What's the outcome for you, for your team, for your client? What's the goal? The second thing is chunk. I just really like the word chunk. Chunk all the content that you have into sensible pieces, topics, things like that. So if you're doing an infographic, you're going to have to work out how to chunk the content. If you're doing a meeting, you probably have an agenda. And there's a series of topics or moves in that agenda. So that's what I mean there. So you have to think about what are the significant topics that you're going to move through. Thirdly, is think about that level for each of these chunks. Do you want to appeal to the head, that's a brain, the heart, the hands, or a combination of? So think about each of these chunks and think about what level you want your group to engage on, and your group, your audience. Number 4, then use that 3x3 matrix. Use your notebook, your collection of different drawings and frameworks, and choose one or more visual patterns and have a play. Try different things. Like all fantastic, successful things, you probably won't get it right the first time, and that's okay. Try something, maybe put it in front of someone else to say, does this resonate with you? Does this make sense? Try something different, but have a play with different visual patterns. And then number 5, once you have a set of visual patterns that you think appeal to the right level with the right topics, start to arrange those patterns in some sort of 2D space, two-dimensional space. And depending on what you're working on, it might be something that is a bit like a canvas to say, well, the first thing we're going to do is this chunk. The second thing is this chunk. The third one's probably the biggest, and so on. It could be that. It could be something where you're using a multiple set of metaphors, like, you know, we use the flag, a cloud, things like that. And then the last thing, of course, is think about any other associated pieces you need. So if it's a meeting, you might need some other associated areas in your visual framework to do with writing out the agenda, or a parking lot, or if it's an infographic or a rich picture of some sort, you might need something to do with a key or a scale, some notes, all those other things that you know you're going to need space for in that visual framework that you're using. Okay, that's a lot to take in. So let's step through it step by step, because I want to show you how I basically used this process to come up with a pattern, a framework that I use all the time now with teams, and I put onto the Drawify platform as well. So right now there's a template on Drawify called Team Balloon, and I want to show you how I came up with that. And I came up with it using this process. So here we go. The first one, as I said, get clear on the goal of your communication, your workshop, your meeting, things like that. So here's an example. We've got a new team, and the goal is that that new team comes away with a shared understanding. So here's my team. A shared understanding of their purpose, how to achieve that purpose, how to best work together, how do they interact with the rest of their organization? Like, what's the sort of operating model maybe that that team needs to think about? So these sort of meetings definitely happen at these topics, this goal definitely comes up at team offsites, team kickoffs, or perhaps when a team is starting a new project and there's a project kickoff. So this might resonate with you. And it's certainly something that comes up for me as well. All right, so that's our goal. And as I mentioned, the next thing we have to do, step 2, is chunk your content, love that word, into a logical sequence of moves. So if you come up with an agenda, that's a great place to start. So I'm going to keep going with a meeting as an example here. So first thing, I think, well, if the overall goal was about the team purpose, identity, directions, things like that, I think we're going to need to definitely define our purpose. We need to do that. And perhaps what goals that we should aim for. And maybe we need to talk about, well, we need to define the sort of work we need to do, define the work we need to do to achieve that purpose. To achieve that purpose. And what else do we need to do? Well, we need to look at our collective strengths and weaknesses. We need to do that. And we also need to look at the opportunities, because yes, we have strengths, and yes, we have a great team, but time and budget is always finite. We can't do everything. So we need to think, well, what are the main opportunities we need to go after? And then I guess we need to think about how to best work together. What are the roles and responsibilities of the different people in the team? What does each team member need from each other? Things like that. And maybe something about secret sauce, like what's that secret sauce of the team, the thing that really holds us together, something like that. So I imagine you might do something similar when you're working up an agenda for a meeting like that. So that's step number 2. There we go. All I did was write. I'm just writing here. Now what we can do is step 3, think about the level of engagement that we want from our audience or from the people that are going to be in this meeting. And we use that 3 by 3. So here's the different moves I've got. See, define purpose, what work we should do, strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, how to best work together. And then I use the 3 by 3. And I think, well, for each of these, which column does it fit into? So purpose and goals, well, that's strategy and systems. So see what I'm doing there? And I guess, how do I want people to engage with that? Well, I guess it's definitely logical, but there's probably a bit of emotional as well. What work should we do? Well, that's definitely strategy and quite logical. Collective strengths and weaknesses. Oh, that's definitely strategic. Definitely a mix of logical and emotional. I would imagine some people, might feel uncomfortable talking about weaknesses, but they know that they need to discuss it. What best opportunities to go after? Yeah, I think that's logical and strategy and systems. So far, we're definitely seeing a trend here. This is a strategic meeting. This isn't a tactical meeting. We're not going to work out a project plan in this meeting. This is conceptually above that, if that makes sense. And lastly, how best to work together? Probably problems and solutions. Probably more emotional than logical. Definitely some logical, but definitely emotional. So see what I did there? I went through and I used my matrix, and that's why it's really good if you draw your own version of this and just use that to think about how you want people to engage with each of those chunks, each move, and what type of discussion and what information it is. So that's number 3. Now that I've classified that, now I can look at each of those moves and I can play with different visual frameworks to suit. So I can think about, well, there was a lot of stuff in there about strengths and weaknesses. And so I could use, the good old SWOT chart, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I could do that. That's a bit boring. Maybe I could use a boat. I've used a boat before, where you basically have, it's the same 2 by 2, like the strengths are the kind of tailwinds, the opportunities are the stars that we navigate by. Weaknesses, maybe they're the anchors, what anchors are holding us back. And threats, the kind of mines. I think some people use sharks when they use this as a visual pattern.
I really love this visual pattern, Ben. It's awesome.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So I could use that boat. That could be great. And I could certainly have a team in there. But it's not covering everything. It's not covering what work we need to do. And so there was a lot of logic that I had before, wasn't there? Where there's something where we need to define a purpose. And we need a set of goals to achieve to know that we reach that purpose. And I think, well, logically, what's the work we need to do to achieve those goals? So what projects do we need to undertake to achieve those goals? And then, of course, the team. you know, what team do we need? What projects do we need? So see how I could use this stack visual pattern. That could be fine too. And I could use the good old flag on a mountain. I do like the flag on the mountain. It's great. You know, we've got weather, but you know, we've got milestones along the way. We've got, you know, maybe one path up. Maybe there's another path that we could possibly take. So I could use something like that where there's this idea of journey, like it's a new team going on a journey. So I've got a mix to work with here, but it looks a bit bitsy. It's a bit awkward if I have those three. And could there be a way I could combine them? And here's where it's great to flex a bit of creativity, try a few different things. And I want to show you now what I came up with. So I think, well, I don't want a boat, but I like the idea of people in something, going somewhere. I like that. And I've got this stack. And so could I wrap some kind of metaphor around that stack with people in it? And that is how I hit on the idea of using a hot air balloon. Because I've got this lovely big open space that I could draw on a whiteboard, or I could use a circle in a Miro board or a mural canvas. If anyone uses online collaboration spaces like that. So now I can go, all right, I've got my area for purpose. I've got my area for, what did I say? Goals and projects. And the team, well, the team are in that basket underneath, aren't they? So just draw a simple basket there. Hope you can see that all right. And here's my team. And you might want to actually draw, you might want to draw the, you know, the exact number of people. Or maybe you might want to give the pen to each person in the team so they can draw themselves in the basket. And I might play with that metaphor to think, oh, the basket, like that's what holds us, you know, like sometimes when you play with these sort of metaphors, a new part of the metaphor helps you connect with a different piece of content that is great for your audience. So this could be like, you know, what holds us together? That could be cool to talk about. And of course, it's real magic when people can, as Dave Allen says, great quote by Dave Allen. If you know me, you've probably heard me say this quote before. Dave Allen wrote, "Getting things done." I think heads are for having ideas, not holding them. And the reason why I love visual frameworks is that we can get all those ideas out of people's heads and onto the whiteboard or onto the canvas, onto the visual framework. And it's also good if they can actually see themselves in that framework. Magical, it's really good. So we've got the basket, you know, literally holding us together, sorry, metaphorically holding us together. And just like the boat, we had an area here for tailwinds. So this part of our framework could be for strengths. What are our collective strengths? And what about those, the stars were how we navigate by. And here's where we have a space for our opportunities. And another aspect of this metaphor I could play with is kind of headwinds, or in other words, like what could blow us off course? You know, what are the risks? And what else? Oh, our weaknesses. In the boat, we had anchors. So maybe here we need some Sandbags. Hope you can see me drawing sandbags there. You know, what are the weaknesses? What are the things weighing us down? Now I think I've got everything. If I look back on my list, I've got the purpose, I've got goals, I've got, here we are, what else did I have? Opportunities. Oh, how best to work together. Okay, I've got to put that in. Well, luckily, I've got some space. So maybe it's something to do with maybe this part of the balloon. Roles and responsibilities. How about that? Responsibilities. So see how now it all works together as a logical whole, as a metaphorical whole. And I was able to arrive at this because I broke it down and I used that system as well. And as I mentioned, now you can use this as a framework where you can get people to put their sticky notes on. You know, what do you think our purpose is? What goals should we focus on? What are each person's roles and responsibilities? And you could write notes. You could do this as a PDF template and give everyone a PDF and give everyone the opportunity to fill it out themselves, print it out, write all over it, and then bring that to a meeting. You could do that as well. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is actually how I arrived at the team balloon canvas. I'll write team balloon canvas. There we go. Now that was a wild ride there. I know I threw a lot of information at you, but I hope you can see a few different things going on there. There's that, using that 3x3 matrix, just to add a bit of categorization so that it helps us know which frameworks to draw on, pardon the pun. And then the other thing is this process to come up with a visual framework that will match the purpose of your meeting. And the final thing I'll say on this is, remember, it's all about alignment and decisions. Alignment. Where do I fit in? Where are we going? Who's with me? And the decisions. Am I confident enough to make this decision? What are the risks? And if I'm not confident, how might I find out? What information could I try to find to get more confident to make a decision? How do we make the decision together? And so I hope that's been really useful for you as a worked out example there. Very happy to throw to Marta to ask questions, and obviously to everyone listening for questions.
Ben, thank you so much. I don't know if you see the chat, but everybody's loving it. So people are writing some comments and they all saying it's very useful and they're for sure gonna use it. So thank you, because this is awesome. I also find it awesome. And it's actually really beautiful how you do it. Obviously, because you are one of the best drawers I met. But
thank you.
I think it's very useful. Yeah. So if anybody has questions, feel free to write them on the chat or in the questions and answers. And also, I wanted to ask you if you can answer the poll that we prepared. It's just a minute. It's a couple of questions. Only if you can. Below, you can see that we created a poll. Yeah, you see it now. Okay. We just only these two questions where we ask you if you knew about us before this workshop, and also from where you came from. So it's also useful for us to then know about our statistics. So only if you have time, please answer this poll. And also, as I said, we will share the recording after this. Maybe today or tomorrow you will receive an email with the recording. And well, I think that's it. If you don't have any question, Well, of course, thank you again for joining us. And thank you, Ben. We hope everybody enjoyed it. I'm sure they did. And we have a question.
We've got one question here.
Yeah, we have Carly. How do you create these visuals during online meetings? I heard you mention Miro. How do you deal with the drawing limitations?
That's a really, really good question. Thanks, Carly. Luckily, things like Miro and Mural have some basic geometric objects in them, like boxes, arrows, squares, rectangles, circles, triangles. It's amazing what you can create just using those. For example, here's a digital version. So you can see how I've got like a digital circle and some lines. I've got a, what do you call that, a trapezium. The opportunities, they're just squares turned at 45 degrees and they're stars, you know. So I think if you're able to prepare a Miro canvas or a mural canvas beforehand, before your online meeting, that's the best way to go. If all else fails, what you can do is basically section your board up according to those chunks, those topics, and have a panel for each topic. And people can do their post-ups, you know, put their sticky notes and so on, and you can discuss those. Oh, quick tip, I find I use some space at the bottom of each panel, and I make sure people have the opportunity to summarize before they move on. So I say, okay, all this conversation here about whatever it might be, strengths, whatever, I say, how would you summarize that in a tweet? Or what's our one biggest strength? Or what's the biggest risk? Try to kind of summarize before then moving on. So even just doing that spatial organization is helpful. But then, of course, it's nice if you have time to think, well, what metaphor does this sound like and feel like? Is it a tree? Is it a cake? Is it a house? Is it an iceberg? And you can just approximate the shape of whatever it is using those simple geometric shapes. And people will understand it. Yeah. Hope that helps.
I hope that Carly, okay, thanks for your answer. Yeah, she's happy with the answer.
Give me another one, Marta.
Yeah, we have Diana. Could you explain a little bit further the sixth step for the visual framework creation? I didn't understand the concept of associated areas. Do you mean like an additional workspace for the team?
Yep. So say I have my framework area that I'm using, and just for consistency, say it's the one about the team balloon. I might just reserve some space on the side where I have an area for agenda so that everyone is clear. When do we handle each part? When is there a break? When can I get a coffee? And I can put a parking lot. So if something comes up that is important, but we don't have time to talk about right now, at least that's captured there. Remember, it's a parking lot, not a wrecking yard. Things don't go there to die. That's where we need to go into the next steps. So now that we've done our team balloon or our journey up the mountain or whatever the meeting is, what are the next steps? So that's what I mean by the step 6 associated areas. Hope that helps.
And someone said the mountain or the road is getting tired. So Carrie is asking if you have a better visual for a journey or a roadmap.
Oh, good one.
She feels it's getting tired with the mountain or road.
Yeah. Here's one. Look, this doesn't happen a lot for me. It depends on the team. I find this one's helpful for startups, young teams, and it's the windscreen. So it's still going on a journey. So you use it for purpose, planning, things like that. But what I'm doing is I'm drawing a simple view of the windscreen. There's a steering wheel, other things on the dashboard, horizon, road, mountains. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Now, the team is in a metaphorical car looking at the road ahead. The rear view mirror, that's a space for looking back. What have we learned? So we could capture stuff in here. What have we learned? What's gone well? What's gone, not so well? The fluffy dice, look, honestly, it's like fun. Are we having fun? Or maybe it's tooling. Like, what tools do we need? Fluffy dice. Does anyone have fluffy dice on their car anymore? I used to have fluffy dice. I don't know what happened to them. Who's driving? Something about roles and responsibilities. Where are we going?
Lisa says she has Elvis.
So that's a nice kind of riff on the idea of journey, road.
Okay, so Carrie says she loves that one. So thank you for your answer. And then we have Erica saying that she feels that her perfectionism when it comes to art and drawing holds her back from creating such frameworks. Any tips you think could be useful for getting into visual frameworks, note-taking, etc.? And also they are asking, where do you get the inspiration for the metaphors of the visuals?
Okay. A couple of things. Of course, I know it's a cliche, but it's true. Practice, practice, practice. Practice in the comfort and privacy of your own notebook. When you see something you like, don't just like screenshot it or like it or whatever. Draw it. Open up a page and draw it. Oh, look. I hope this doesn't offend any vegans or vegetarians. I walked past a butcher and I saw the poster of the cow with a cross section. I thought, oh, that's interesting. I've never used it in a meeting, but you never know, right? So that's one thing. At least practice in a notebook. Another tip I find, and I did this yesterday actually. If you draw on whiteboards in office spaces, it can be very scary drawing in front of people, can't it? And one tip that I teach people is try to book the room half an hour earlier, 15 minutes earlier, and draw whatever you want as the visual framework on the whiteboard. Maybe it's the team balloon. I keep drawing that. Maybe it's the iceberg, something like that. So get it right where you want and then rub it off. And you find there's that little bit of dry erase shadow left. And that's like your template for the template. And then when people come in, you get your black dark marker and no one can see it. Like they don't notice what you've already rubbed out, but you can still see it on the board and then basically use that as a guide. And that's a great way to boost your confidence by following something you've already drawn. Yeah. And the other thing I'll say is, as far as the perfectionism, and I'm a perfectionist from way back, just try to keep it simple. Try to channel your perfectionism into saying, well, how might I make this perfectly simple? I hope that helps. Yeah. And Marta, what was the other one?
Carrie is asking again, how might you use this model for goal setting? But now I'm not sure which model is she referring to. But Erica, the answer that you just gave seems to be perfect because she's saying thank you so much. A lot of people
Oh,
is
good.
commenting.
Oh, good.
A lot of people is writing comments. They all seem to be very happy. Okay, now Carrie says she was referring to
the balloon.
Yeah.
Yeah, good one. Here's where you could have the balloon, but leave some space for that mountain. In other words, where are they going? So we've got our team. And yes, we have purpose here, but rather than putting goals just as static pieces of information in the balloon, we can say, well, here's our primary goal. And to get there, we're going to need to kind of plot a path. And here's milestone number 1, 2, 3. Maybe this is Q2, like quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. And then we've got some space here to put some details. If anyone uses OKRs, objectives and key results, something else you can do is, say you've got the sun, that's the objective. And the key results are connected to that objective. And the key results are what we measure to know that we're having progress toward that objective. And so you can use the sky as a space to map that out. I'd pick one of those, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
There you go.
So,
in which of your books?
Yeah, I was about to say that
that
answering your questions broadly, you can also get some inspiration from the Drawify drawings. So if you're not registered yet, that's a good opportunity for you to get some inspiration. You will find Ben's drawings there and other artists. So maybe you can try there. And I don't know, what book can they find this information? Is it Presto Sketching?
It certainly is.
Okay.
I should quickly say before I forget, all of those elements that I just drew, like the balloon, the wind, the flag, the mountain, they're all separate elements in Drawify. And you can export those, like you can make the framework that you want in Drawify and then export it as an image. And then bring that image into Miro.
Exactly. Exactly.
Boom. And then you can do your post up on top. But yes, everything, I put my entire heart and soul and life into Presto sketching. Oh, there was a thing about metaphors. I think there's a library of, I think it's 100 or 101 metaphors in here with examples of how to use them.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm
proud of that chapter.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, guys, if you want to be in the loop of this kind of workshops, we have usually 2 or 1 per month, 1 or 2 per month. Yeah. So if you want to be in the loop, you just have to register on Drawify and we'll keep you posted every month. Ben, thank you again for your amazing presentation. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and it seems that they did. And they're still commenting if you can see that they seem to be very happy with it. So I'm glad that you all enjoyed it.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
No, thank you for sure. And well, I think we are at the end of it. Thank you for your time. And we'll share the recording with all of you so you can watch it again, copy the patterns of Ben, and get inspired with him again. So thank you, everybody. We'll hope to see you in the upcoming sessions again. Thank you, Ben. See you soon.
Thanks, Marta. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now. See you at the next one.
Okay, thank you. Bye.